Shana Tova. I grew up in Plainsboro, New Jersey, a suburb nestled between New York and Philadelphia. Our town made T-shirts that read, "Our pride is in our diversity." My public school classmates spoke dozens of languages. Many were children of immigrants from India, China, Korea, and across Latin America and the former Soviet Union. Moving to Gaithersburg brought back fond memories of my hometown. When I was growing up, the Jewish population made up about 5% of the school district. At home, our walls were covered in Jewish art, our shelves full of Judaica. We were deeply involved in our synagogue community, and my parents hosted Passover Seders each year, tables extending endlessly like a magician's handkerchief. There was always room for one more guest. I loved being Jewish. I still do. I was proud to be Jewish. And yet, there are moments from my childhood that make me wince when I think back on them. I remember how I switched bus stops in 3rd grade because some of the neighborhood kids had been throwing pennies at me. In 5th grade, a close friend of mine, who was white and Catholic, began complaining about how she didn't like her Jewish nose, how she wished she could make the bump go away. In middle school, a non-Jewish student on the bus made crass jokes about Jews in concentration camps. These are old injuries, and they still throb when anti-Semitism is in the air, like joint pain before a storm. I know I am not alone, that many of us have stories like this. Way back in 2021, before Greta Gerwig's Barbie captivated global attention, a sketch comedy troupe in Israel known as Yehudim Ba'im offered some commentary about the iconic doll and American Jewry. The satirical scene takes place in California in the winter of 1959 in the home of Ruth Handler, the creator of Barbie and the child of Polish-Jewish immigrants. Ruth's daughter, a tween girl named Barbara, opens holiday presents next to an oversized menorah and a Christmas tree. She shakes a gift-wrapped box, asking innocently, "What is it? A giant dreidel? A shofar?" Tearing away the paper, she pulls out a Barbie doll. She's disappointed and laments, "I wanted a doll that looks like me." "Sweetie," her dad reassures her, "it's not important that Barbie looks like you. What's important is that you will look like Barbie." "Honey," her mom chimes in our eyes, you're perfect. But in the eyes of an anti-Semite, you're easy prey." Barbara's puzzled. I don't understand," she says. Her parents continue, "Sweetie, you look more Jewish than a Canadal." And they banter back and forth in Hebrew, spouting off common anti-Semitic tropes that Barbara evokes when she walks into a room. As I watched that sketch that came out again this year when the Barbie movie was big, I wanted to cry and I wanted to laugh at the same time. Dark humor like this shared between Jews is an attempt to bring uncomfortable things to light, a way to transform the toxic hatred we have taken in into cathartic, life-giving laughter. As Jews in America, we have thrived. We have generated well springs of Jewish creativity and built lasting Jewish institutions and organizations. We have benefited from and contributed to our nation's democracy and civil society. We have led in transformative ways in science, the arts, business, government, and intellectual life. We've even had a few famous athletes. And yet, with all we've attained, there's a question that we cannot put to rest. Are we safe here? Are we free to be our full Jewish selves here? Unsettled by events in recent years and days, in light of the thousands of years of stories and memories that we've inherited, that we carry in our bodies, we wonder, what does it look like? What does it feel like to be safe? What does it mean to be safe as Jews in America? After Charlottesville, Squirrel Hill, Jersey City, Poway, Colleyville, amidst Zoom bombing and swastikas and swatting, our diverse and progressive Montgomery County has been far from immune to the national rise in anti-Semitic incidents. This year, it seemed like every other day there was a report of anti-Semitic graffiti sprayed and scribbled on our public schools. The words, "Jews not welcome," were painted on a sign outside of Bethesda's Walt Whitman High School. Along the Bethesda trolley trail, disturbing images were painted on a wall next to the words, "No mercy for Jews." Children discovered the hateful graffiti on their way to their school bus stop. And while some incidents pose a greater imminent threat than others, it hurts every time. It is painful, and it's hard to process. On top of all the other ways we sometimes are made to be aware that we're different as Jews or as part of Jewish families. And we're exhausted. And really, how is this still happening? Happening again, happening here. The trolley trail wall was quickly covered over with fresh paint. Rabbi Yosef and I joined rabbis, Jewish neighbors, and friends from the Montgomery County interfaith community for a vigil to denounce hatred and to declare Am Yisrael Chai. We, the Jewish people, we are alive. We are here. We are proud of who we are. Later that week, on Friday, Jewish children and parents from JDS gathered to chalk messages of love and understanding with a local artist at the site of the incident. And I asked the artist to sketch the words, "We are beautiful. We are beloved. We are worthy of life." We are beautiful. We are beloved. We are worthy of life. This was the mantra that I carried with me following the massacre at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh. It's based on words from our morning prayers, Ahava Rabbah Tanu. We are loved by an unending love. And for a period, I would sing these words over and over to myself and to my Jewish children. Ahava Rabbah Ahavtanu. We are beautiful, we are beloved, we are worthy of life. Because even if we know with all our hearts that anti-Jewish hatred is wrong, that the myths are not true, as it is with any pernicious lie, with repeated exposure, it leaks in and causes damage. Ahava Rabbah Ahavtanu. We are beautiful, we are beloved, we are worthy of life. After an anti-Semitic attack in a kosher supermarket in Jersey City, I said these words from the Bima in Philadelphia. And a woman from our congregation approached me after the service to say, "In my 62 years, I've never heard anyone say before that Jewish people are beautiful." Yes, we are beautiful. Jewish people come in all different shapes and sizes and colors, and we are beautiful, all of us. This is a truth we need to tell ourselves, as we haven't always received that message from the dominant culture. I remember the distinct smell in my bunk at summer camp as a dozen mostly curly, dark-haired Ashkenazi Jewish girls got ready for Shabbat, straightening irons plugged into all of the outlets. I cannot fast for the entirety of Yom Kippur. I cannot fast because as a teenager, I struggled with an eating disorder. As I've learned from rabbis and doctors over the years, it is a mitzvah for me to eat on this holy day. There is, by the way, an organization that's called Mitzvah to Eat, and it's a pluralistic support group for Jews who need accommodations for fast days and other Jewish ritual practices due to health conditions, disabilities, trauma, and more. When I struggled with disordered eating in high school, as always, there was a web of biological, psychological, and social factors that led to it, and I'm so grateful to Hashem for helping me to reconnect with the will to live. And in the many decades since I've been in recovery, I've also come to the realization that internalized anti-Semitism played a role. I'd been imbibing insidious messages that I was supposed to conform to an ideal of beauty that is genetically and physiologically impossible for my body. Burdened by an existential ambivalence, I wondered, am I allowed to stand out, to be curvy and curly? Am I allowed to take up space as a woman in this Jewish body? If I look more like Barbie, maybe I will be safe. I know my story is not unique. So, my beautiful, beloved Jewish community, how do we heal from the inside out? How do we find a sense of safety? When anti-Jewish hate comes at us, how do we respond and survive and thrive? We can find a path forward from our ancient Yom Kippur rituals for seeking transformation. It's a day of covering over, of rolling out a fresh coat of paint that doesn't delete the past, but makes space for life in the present and the future. This is a season of gestures of repair, of sacred rites to guide us toward holiness. As Aaron, the high priest, would facilitate the rituals of atonement in all of their messiness, there was an order to things. He would first make offerings for himself, then his households, then the entire Jewish people. Atonement came in concentric circles. In seeking healing, Aaron turned first inward, then towards those close to him, and finally he held space for the transformation of the entire community. Tonight, I want to suggest 3 responses for living in a world with anti-Semitism. They are loving our Jewish selves, loving our Jewish people, and loving our neighbors. I know these are not the only possible responses, and each of these responses is deeply challenging. Loving our Jewish selves, loving our Jewish people, and loving our neighbors. What I'm asking of us is complex and ongoing relational work that can take a lifetime. I have faith that we can do this. We don't have to do it alone, and we don't have to do it all at once. Number 1, loving our Jewish selves. Our beloved Shari Torah teacher and community member, Rabbi Dr. Julia Watts-Belzer, just published a powerful book called Loving Our Own Bones, Disability Wisdom and the Spiritual Subversiveness of Knowing Ourselves Whole. Her work has inspired me to ask the question, what does it look like to love our own Jewish bones? Rabbi Julia writes, I won't spend my time making a case that disabled people deserve a place within religious communities or that we have an equal claim to divine love and regard. All too often, minoritized peoples get drawn into this trap. We end up asking for acceptance, pleading for recognition, marshaling the case for our own dignity. But none of us should have to argue in this way for our own inherent worth. It corrodes the heart. It saps the soul. I'm not much for pronouncements about God or for making claims to divine truth, but if there's one thing I know for sure, it's that disabled lives have value. We are cherished. We are beloved. Full stop. No proof texts needed. This was a transformative passage for me to read in the way it applies to Jewish identity and other identities that we hold that may be targeted. As a minoritized people, it can be incredibly demoralizing to have to constantly assert that our lives have value. Of course, we need to denounce anti-Semitism and call on our communal institutions and leaders to address hatred of Jews as well. But asserting that we have worth is not the same as cultivating a sense of worth for ourselves. I want us to love our Jewish bones, our cherished Jewish selves, by living into our Jewishness. We can love our Jewish bones by kindling the flames of our Jewish hearts and hearths. We can lift up the things we love about being Jewish, the things that bring us joy and sustain us. Last week, I posted a simple question on Facebook. I asked, "What do you love about being Jewish?" And the responses flowed. This gorgeous thread, it made me smile, it made me verklempt, it made me fall in love again with Judaism and my Jewishness. And here are some of the things that my Facebook friends, including many of you, love about being Jewish. We love eating together, celebrating together, praying together, singing together, mourning together, community, and more community. The joy of doing mitzvot and the mitzvah of having joy. Celebration of life, the elevation of everyday events to holy events, awareness of changing seasons and sacred time, sex positivity, the theological principle of 2 Jews, 3 opinions. There is more than one way to understand something, more than one way to be Jewish. As the Torah teaches, these are the words of the living God. Jewish life is highly adaptable to reflect the time and place where we find ourselves. It provides a genuine link to the natural world and a path for being in balance. We love Shabbat. The way Judaism creates a layer in the world to remind us constantly that the day-to-day grind and what's in front of you now is not ultimate reality. We love celebrating the holiday with family and friends, the calendar, our life cycle rituals, round challah with raisins, spirituality, prayers sung in Hebrew to new and traditional melodies together as one voice. Rootedness. We are lucky to be the inheritors of thousands of years of collective wisdom. Our ancestors have so much to teach us about survival and resilience, connection to something greater than ourselves, tradition, passed down from generation to generation. We love looking to the past for guidance and to the future for growth, and the call to continue to reinterpret Judaism as modernity advances. Someone wrote, "I love how the living Torah always has something to teach me. I love the encouragement to ask questions, especially if we don't know the answers. I love wrestling with God, arguing with text, God, and others for the sake of heaven, questioning authority, the embrace of learning and debate in pursuit of imperfect truth, the Talmudic practice of carefully examining and taking into account exceptions and edge cases, the practice of lifelong learning. I love how there's meaning in everything. The practice of blessing, the structure of funeral rituals and mourning customs, pretty much everything. I love Hebrew, Yiddish, Jewish languages. Being Jewish is not just a religion, it's a culture. It's a camaraderie and connection I feel with someone as soon as I find out they are Jewish. Jewish geography, the global Jewish community. I like being part of a tribe, an ethno-religion that is more than a religion and more than an ethnic group. Being Jewish provides a Hamish, homey community around which to center my life. Like Moses, we are the quintessential insider-outsider. We love the commandment to be publicly different than other dominant religions. You kidding me? What's not to love? Someone wrote. I love that the holiest day is about becoming better. I love Jewish values of loving kindness, the obligation to do tikkun olam, tzedakah, giving money to those in need as an act, not as an act of charity, but as a requirement for pursuing justice, the moral compass, the theological importance of forgiveness as change and justice, Judaism informs how I think about equity and our justice system in deep ways. Judaism provides me with a set of values that sing to my soul. I love God, Shekhinah, HaKadosh Baruch Them, our sacred Holy One, is pretty awesome. I love Jewish perseverance, curly hair, olive skin, symbolic foods, J-date, Hidur mitzvah, bringing beauty to everything we do, our prayers, art, architecture, Judaica, also the food. Have we mentioned the food? Open-heartedness, humor, literally everything. I love our Shari Torah community. Being Jewish is the definition of me. It encircles all of who I am. Judaism brings the light and color to my life. It's indivisible from what I love about myself. It is feelings of comfort. It is family. It is belonging. It makes me feel rooted, connected, and free. And we can go on and on and on. And I encourage you, you're all welcome to find me on Facebook and respond to the thread and keep it going. This love letter to our own Jewish bones doesn't make the yucky stuff go away. It may not make the haters back down, but it reminds us how expansive and enriching and life-giving our Jewish identities and lives can be. This sense of belonging and Jewish pride is what we are hoping to cultivate in our Shari Torah community and in our brand new religious school program, Nisiyah, which we are launching this season. And as we say in our Shari Torah mission statement, we are here to grow Jewishly together. So I encourage you over this next day of Yom Kippur to think about how will you lean into Jewish living this year as a way of loving your own Jewish bones. Number 2, loving the Jewish people. As we seek to breathe and thrive in a world polluted with anti-Semitism, how can we find compassion for our Jewish people, those who are similar and different? Our rabbis remind us that we are bound together, our destinies inextricably linked. Part of what it means to be part of the people Israel is that we have a responsibility to one another. Worldwide, Jews make up only 0.2% of the population, 0.2%. There are 15 million of us, 7 million in North America, 7 million in Israel, and 1 million around the world. That's it. Can we have the courage to see and lift up the light and beauty of those who do Jewish differently than we do? Reform, Reconstructionist, Renewal, Conservative, Orthodox, Haredi, Hasidic, secular, humanist, cultural, Jews by choice, Jews in interfaith families, Ashkenazi, Mizrahi, Sephardi, Ethiopian, Russian, modern, traditional. There's so many different Jewish identities. And what would it be like to shed layers of shame we feel towards ourselves and others, to see our Jewish siblings whose Jewish identities and practices diverge from our own as beautiful, beloved, and worthy of life? Rabbi Alan Liu of blessed memory is known in many Jewish circles for writing the spiritual guide to this holy season. This is real, and you are completely unprepared. And he was also a poet who particularly loved to write poetry while traveling by plane. And his wife recently published his poetry in a book called From the Air. So one poem really resonated with the Jewish girl from New Jersey in me. I want to read it to you. A room full of Jews in Newark, New Jersey, waiting to fly to Israel in a time of danger. Tired and depressed, young and old, dark and light, short and shorter. Every outfit a theological discourse. Everyone pushing ahead at the gate. Every soul exposed. My people, the ones who never learned to hide their hearts. My people, the ones who never learned to hide their hearts. I am ashamed to think there ever was a time I could have failed to love them. This was a journey in our own family, making space for different ways of doing Jewish. Yosef grew up Orthodox. I grew up in a conservative feminist home. When we got married, it wasn't so simple. We planned a pre-wedding Shabbat with multiple minyanim, a Friday night service with a seating section for those who identified as men, those who identified as women, and a mixed section with a tri-chitza, like 3 different partitions to divide them. We hired a kosher caterer for the Shabbaton and our wedding with understanding that the level of kashrut would work for all of our relatives. But 2 weeks before the wedding, I get this call that there's an issue with the caterer that we've selected and that close family members will not be able to eat the food. So at the time I get this call, I was interning in a synagogue in Hoboken, and I remember I was on my way to the PATH train back to New York City, and instead I remember going into the nearest bar by myself. I ordered a whiskey, and I told the bartender that I would no longer be getting married. I had had enough of the family politics. In the end, our sister-in-law helped us to find a new mashgiach to oversee the kashrut, and he joined us for the entire Shabbat along with his wife. He had long curly payas and pinstripe knickers. He looked very, very Jewish. And he was so kind. He spent the entire weekend bonding with our guests. His wife came to our egalitarian minyan because she wanted to be able to teach her children that there are many different kinds of Jews in the world. These days, our children treasure Shabbatot spent together with our Orthodox family in Passaic, New Jersey, when we are completely immersed in Jewish time, where it is so clear what is at the center. This year, I pray, may our Ahavat Yisrael, our love of Jewish people, ripple out to heal the deep rifts among us and build a Jewish world and an Israel where multiple voices are heard. A Jewish world and an Israel where we savor the multifaceted manifestations and songs of our living God. Number 3, loving our neighbors. I'm almost done. I'm almost there. You still with me? Okay, thank you. As we seek to live and thrive as Jews in America, it is essential that we build and strengthen relationships across difference. We know that we are among many minority groups in this country that have also been targeted by hatred and violence. And it's essential that we stand with our Jewish and non-Jewish, Black, Brown, Asian, and First Nations siblings, with LGBTQ folks, with Muslim neighbors. In a vulnerable and frightening time, getting to know one another's stories and showing up alongside one another helps us to cultivate our sense of safety and connection. When we lived in Philadelphia, the synagogues we served were part of a robust interfaith community organizing network. And in 2015, when there was a horrific anti-Black massacre in an AME church in Charleston, South Carolina, we gathered together to pray and weep in Mother Bethel AME Church. And in 2018, after the devastating murders of Jewish people on Shabbat at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, our neighbors of different faiths surrounded us to pray and weep with us. In 2019, after an attack at a mosque in Christchurch, New Zealand, we all showed up at the Masjidullah Mosque in this building that actually had been a synagogue and then a church and then a mosque. And we showed up there together to pray and weep. Here at Shari Torah, our Sea Change group is working in partnership with a number of shuls across the county dedicated to the work of relational organizing to create a Montgomery County of belonging for all. We are stronger when we stand together, when we know each other deeply. Another way we practice loving our neighbors is through a commitment to education. We are grateful to be participating in the ADL's Kulanu program. With Kulanu, which is Hebrew for all of us, we are part of a network of congregations that address anti-Semitism and other forms of hatred through education, community engagement, and advocacy. And we hope that many of you will be inspired to join our Kulanu work and our Sea Change efforts this year as we build bridges of understanding across communities in our region. Many of you in this room lived through the painful and frightening spring when our Shari Torah building was vandalized. And you've shared the stories with us. And for those who've joined the community more recently, like us, in 2015, our sacred home was defaced with swastikas and hateful anti-Jewish graffiti by local high school students. Our community member and regional director of the ADL, Meredith Weisel, discovered the vandalism on an early morning jog. One of the perpetrators was 18 at the time of the incident and was tried as an adult. He could have been sentenced to 9 years in prison for a hate crime. However, our Shari Torah leadership saw the value of education over punishment. Rabbi Jacob met with this student and encouraged him to visit the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum. He wrote an essay about what he had learned. He helped to repaint our synagogue. Rabbi Jacob and our Shari Torah president at the time, Connie Liss, spoke with this young man about tshuva, the possibility of repentance and repair after making mistakes. He made an apology, and he's held to his promise not to repeat this harmful behavior. In the wake of the anti-Semitic vandalism at Shari Torah, a number of our neighboring congregations also came together to respond publicly and with the goal of bringing healing in a time of hurt and to making a long-term difference in Montgomery County. The Interfaith 5K was born, and it continues to this day. I saw many of you there running and walking and volunteering. And each Labor Day, Muslim, Christian, and Jewish neighbors and neighbors of other faiths gather to get to know one another as we do something good for our bodies and support those in need in our local community. As we've practiced in our Shari Torah community, we love our neighbors by turning toward one another, open to the possibility of tshuva, of repair. We love our neighbors by holding on to hope that we can create a future that looks different from our past. When we love our neighbors, we cultivate a community of safety and belonging. Ahava rabbah, ahavtanu. We are loved by an unending love. We are beautiful, we are beloved, we are worthy of life, more life. And this year I pray that we will have the courage to practice loving our Jewish selves, loving our Jewish people, and loving our neighbors. May we not be afraid to take up space in the world. May we step into a living Judaism with curiosity. Together, may we lead meaningful and magnificent Jewish lives that bring us joy. Jewish lives that make our world a more just, colorful, and compassionate place. L'shana tova, tikatevu v'techatemu.